Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. Tonight on our show we have a very unusual and a unique guest. Unusual in the sense that he has spent a lifetime defending the sanctuary of the individual and trying to bring about the importance that government stays out of the individual's life and the individual's allowed to make their own choices. Brilliant, he's a futurist. He's able to foresee farther down the road than many of his contemporaries and tries his best to bring forth his knowledge and his insights. Please welcome on our show Dr. Timothy Leary.
Well, Casper, it's a pleasure to be here. I approve very highly of your program. I understand it's growing nationwide now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How many cities are you in now?
At present, we're in 80 cities and in 44 states.
Oh boy, that's good.
And getting the word out like this is very exciting. Now, you've always been known as the highest rider of every generational wave.
The what?
The highest rider of every generational
Wow.
wave. You've been the forefront. You've been there from the World War II to the early 60s, the 70s, able to, speak the voice and be heard and foresee it. Realizing this, how do you think the wave of the hemp movement is going to settle into the population and break upon the shores of our ecology problems?
Break on the shores of our ecology problem.
Yes, sir.
I can see that. Oceans of green hemp doing that. The present laws against hemp, I think, are the most irrational and I would say almost insane pieces of puritanical legislation. Maybe you have to go back to the Salem witchcraft trials to get something where so much hysteria has picked out something so benign and so harmless and so profitable and so productive and had this all-out moral, fierce, religious campaign against hemp. Why do you think that there is this religious, fundamentalist, and police government prejudice against hemp? Well, how do you explain it?
My personal views, I feel that it stems from a lot of the oil companies and the people who can make money off it being illegal, keeping it illegal, and together put together a propaganda campaign to mislead the public. And I feel that it will set into the people's mind eventually when the truth is more exposed. Now,
I understand that we're not going to talk about the religious or the emotional, psychological aspects of hemp.
The recreational purposes.
Yeah, we won't talk about that at all. We're going to talk about the practical and the profitable and productive.
Yes, sir.
And the ecological aspects of it.
Absolutely.
I don't know a lot about that. I've read books by Jack Herrera. I've listened. Gosh, there's so many programs and so many articles these days. Everywhere you turn around, you hear intelligent discussions about hemp as a substitute for oil, hemp as a substitute for wood pulp, hemp as a source of energy. It's exciting. The thing that I know most about, however, is the puritanical crusade against hemp, because I was in prison for 4.5 years
for under an ounce, right?
For the possession of 2 roaches which had been planted in my car by a generous, overly generous policeman. And at one point I found myself in prison facing like 50 years imprisonment. I was 50 years at the time, 50 years old. I think, well, this is a strange series of events for such a harmless and even beneficial situation to be charged with so much time.
Now, you escaped from there too, didn't you? The first time.
Well, I did what any sensible 50-year-old would do if you're facing 50 years in prison for 2 roaches of marijuana that they planted in your car. The only common sense thing to do was to escape, and I did that and made a few little B-movie adventures there. But, there are many things in our society that have to be controlled and governed. For example, oil. Look at the way oil is polluting and our atmosphere and acid rain and so forth. Guns should be controlled. I think drugs like steroids should be controlled. I think there should be probably more control over alcohol and nicotine and of all of the botanical, vegetable species that the government is attacking, marijuana is the one they're going after. That's interesting. You know, I sometimes say that hemp is a democratic plant because it was during the democratic regime of Jimmy Carter that hemp was legalized in 14 states, and Carter himself and his cabinet wanted to decriminalize marijuana. And in 1980, you had the Republicans coming in with a hard line, typical crush them, down them.
Just say no.
Yeah, and suddenly the new drugs, which are everywhere, are drugs that I never heard of back in the 60s and the late 70s. Things like crack and cocaine and steroids, they didn't exist. So I call them the Republican drugs. Now they're Republican drugs, why? Because Republicans are hardliners, like to feel tough and aggressive, and I'm number one, and we're going to go over there and we're going to, you know, kick butt. And if you're going to go out there and loot a lot of savings and loans companies, and if you're going to go out there, you know, you got to have a lot of energy, and you got a lot of self-confidence. You got to take toot up with cocaine or a little steroids there. Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, is the typical example of the steroid. We call him Conan the Republican, you know. 'Cause, he's there. Whereas the one thing about the use of hemp as a drug, I've had to warn Republicans about this. If you're a Republican and you're a hardliner and you want to go out there and kick and stretch and get yourself to the top, and if you're in the army or the police or anything like that, you want to have to be tough and mean, and stay away from hemp, because hemp will turn you into a wimp. I mean, really. Look at Carter. He was believing in peace and love, and we
And all the wrong things, right?
All the terrible things.
All the terrible things.
You understand why? Right now, the government is spending much more money crushing the production of hemp. And another thing that puzzles me about the insanity or even the diabolical nature of the right-wing religious Republican situation. Why do they go after the American farmers? They spend more money fighting hemp in this country. You know, in California, which is my home state, hemp was the #1 agricultural cash product. In Iowa, in Tennessee, and like
Back in Indiana, where I'm from,
yeah,
as
how
well.
many states?
At least that we're aware of, 28 or more.
Yeah, honest farmers out there trying to make a living growing hemp, and the government is out there arresting these good-hearted, free enterprise farming agricultural Americans. Meanwhile, down in Colombia and Peru, these gangsters, these cocaine cartel people, are making billions of dollars, and we're spending less money on them. It's how come? I think you're probably right that they don't want people to be using hemp because it would interfere with the oil monopoly. It would interfere with the wood pulp monopoly. And also, I think there's something really religiously diabolic and evil about the right-wing Christians in this country who go after hemp, because they hate people to have pro-choice and to make your own decisions about your life. And
they seem to be some of the people too who overlook the medical aspects of
absolutely,
hemp.
yeah.
Now, from your perspective, and being a psychiatrist as you are, you've had the opportunity to become acquainted with many different aspects of healing and some of the more positive benefits of the uses of hemp. Could you share that, please?
Well, there have been an enormous number of studies that show that that hemp and cannabis was extremely necessary for certain forms of glaucoma. You simply have to have it. But there, in many states, these fanatic anti-pleasure people are so afraid that the patient who's going blind might enjoy the experience that you got to go blind, die, but don't have a good time because the Republicans are in power. I mean, that's apparently the logic here.
Aren't they using it too for anorexia and for cancer, AIDS?
I mean, there's one terrible thing about hemp, and I don't want to get into the use of marijuana, but I got to be honest with you. There are some terrible side effects of smoking or using marijuana. One is it's called refrigerator blackout. I mean, you get the munchies.
Oh, okay.
You know, you smoke a joint, and suddenly there you are. The next thing you know, you've eaten 9 pounds of fig Newton, and say now that's dangerous. You gotta be careful there. On the other hand, if you're dying of cancer or malnourished because of stomach problems and you don't have any appetite. Hemp, of course, is the logical and obvious and natural medicine to give you an appetite to see you through that period. But again, a good true Puritan would rather have you die than
Now we also
have a good meal while you're giggling.
we also know that it's good for stress to calm you down. And from a viewpoint of a psychiatrist, is there any benefits for someone who might be having emotional or mental problems, as opposed to giving them like Valiums or some of these other stronger drugs that seem to be causing problems, like Prozac and so on?
Yeah. Well, number one, I don't want to come out like a smart ass here, and every psychological situation is individual and needs its own, its own pharmacology. So I don't want to generalize, but certainly the things about hemp is it's not addictive. It's extremely it doesn't have any of the side effects of many of the euphorics and the antidepressants that are approved and that doctors' prescriptions will give you. So, yeah, there's a. You see, the thing about religious fanaticism is that the crazier, the nuttier, the wilder, and almost the more nonsensical the belief, the more you hang on to it. So that I've debated for many years a man who was the head of the DEA for about 5 years. His name is Peter Bensinger.
Yes, you have.
And I can't believe him. He's going after hemp, and he's trying to say that, hemp, they gave a lot of some mice some hemp, and it made male mice, teenage male mice, and it made their breasts grow a little. So he said, why, if you college boys, you see if I'm going, I think, why is he going? There are real problems of crack babies in the inner city, and alcohol, which is our number one drug here, and nicotine. 500,000 people die a year from that. Here's this guy blathering on about the dangers of I don't know. He never did mention whether marijuana would make girls' breasts bigger, but I don't even want to get into that. The whole thing is.
Okay,
so
now you've
silly.
also had a few debates with G. Gordon Liddy too.
Yeah, that's right. I have that. Yeah.
And he seems to think that marijuana, i.e., hemp, is one of the plants that's going to lead to a complete social breakdown in our structure of government. And you seem
Well,
to
I
stand.
know Gordon Liddy. I've been debating him. I've known him for years, over 25 years. I know exactly how his mind works. And like a good army man, like a good military man, like a good policeman, like a good follower of his leader, Richard Nixon,
Okay.
Gordon Liddy has never had one unauthorized thought in his life. So he reads the line, so he knows what is it? LSD makes you jump out of windows. Marijuana makes you, what is that? I forget what it is.
Let's say it's the gateway drug.
Yeah, it's a gateway drug, yeah.
That's right, it's the gateway drug.
Yeah. So, I must say here, and I don't want to offend anyone, and if you're a deeply devout Christian, I want you to turn your TV off now, but I feel that there's a great problem in this country in a violation of our civil liberties and personal rights on the basis of the federal government interfering with women's bodies about abortion and these insane war on drugs. Because the war on drugs is a war on Americans. It's not a war on Russians or evil communists and all that. It's a war against 40 or 50 million of us marijuana smokers in this country, which in a way seems like a weird thing that a majority in Congress should suddenly declare war on 30 million otherwise tax-paying, reasonably productive American citizens. I think that the basis is religion.
Okay.
And basis is that you're not allowed to choose what you want to do. It's like any fanatic religious, they'll tell you, you can't use contraceptives because you can't enjoy sex. And if you do conceive a baby, you have no choice about whether you want to bring this baby, when you can handle this baby. And the same thing is true about the choice of your own self-medication. And I personally believe that the war on drugs is the worst attack on American freedom that we've experienced in 200 years. You know, this is the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights. It was in 1791 that they passed those 10 wonderful bills. And basically, what most people don't realize is that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is designed to protect the individual against the government. So the government can't come into your house without a search warrant. The government can't put soldiers in your house. The government can't force you to testify against yourself. The government can't tell you what to read or write. The government can't tell you how to worship your own God. The government can't tell you how to really mind your own business. So it's both ironic, and I think it's also very hopeful that in the year 1991, in the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights, this hemp movement is growing. And I want to tell you it is growing. I give a lot of the talks to students in colleges, and the awareness of the insanity of the marijuana laws is becoming, I think, more and more obvious.
That tells us that perhaps we are finally making an impact across the United States and perhaps around the world. We are really enjoying this interview, and we'll be right back after this. Thank you. Welcome back to Time for Hemp. Today on our show we have the distinguished Dr. Timothy Leary. Timothy, I think you've been aware of some of the changes in the laws here within the American structure of Congress, and all the way down to dog catcher opinions from Nancy Reagan swaying our opinions to just say no.
I have a motto in a bumper sticker and a t-shirt. It says, just say K-N-O-W, no. Think for yourself and don't believe what Nancy Reagan says. Don't believe what I say. Think for yourself and question authority, and you'll...
Well, because of this conservatism, though, some of the laws that were established during the Carter administration, such as decriminalization of marijuana, etc., are beginning to go back to another era, back when the minds were narrow. In Alaska, they've changed the laws back to stiffen the laws.
We are going through a period now. It's what happened in the 60s and 70s. We had in this country a classic renaissance. Now read the history books. A renaissance is a period when there's a sudden surge in self-expression, in the rights of the individual, a loosening of the control of authority, a questioning of a religious dogma, and then a lurch forward. This is always followed by a hardline retreat, so that it's at the same time that there has, in the last 10 years in America, under Reagan and Bush, been this very repressive hard line. Look what's happened to the rest of the world. You know, in Russia just 3 weeks ago, when they had that coup, and then a bunch of young people in Moscow protected Yeltsin and stopped the tanks. You know what it was that was stopping the tanks? It was young Russians, students, who were throwing flowers at the tanks.
That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Does that sound familiar? They learned that
familiar.
absolutely from the American in the 60s and 70s, when we were questioning the authority of Johnson and Nixon and stopping the Vietnam War. Another thing that was amusing about the Russian Revolution, and it's very connected with this, the three men who, young men who got shot by the tanks and were immediately promoted to the highest office or honor of the Soviet Union, the highest order of the land. They were three hippies. And, one was a Grateful Dead head, and one like heavy metal rock, and they let their hair grow, and they all had learned to smoke hashish in Afghanistan. And indeed, they were trying to stop the tanks because it was their brothers and their friends and their colleagues who were in the tanks, because it turned out that the Soviet soldiers that had been sent to Afghanistan hated the idea of going down there and killing Afghani people for no apparent reason. So that I'm very proud of the fact that although in America we've had this very predictable but very violent and mean and nasty Puritanism, and you can't smoke cigarettes, and they're censoring rock and roll records, and they're censoring books. Now, one by one, they're going down the list of personal freedoms. At the same time, the basic American freedoms, which we set going in the 60s, are appearing in the Soviet Union. I go over to Japan.
And ours are reversing, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah.
It seems like the hemp issue could be one of the last strong divides that we face as a body of people in America. Everybody seems to have an opinion, everybody seems upset. Make it legal,
I think that
illegalize
the hemp issue is the place where you can draw the line. And anyone who's watching this program in your city, there's obviously a channel which is carrying this message. Get in touch with the people that are producing this show in your locality, and start embarrassing your local politicians by asking them, for example, of your congressmen and assemblymen and women, how many of you smoked marijuana when you were young, huh?
Mm-hmm.
We know that about 80% of the members of Congress under the age of 50 were smoking marijuana. How come they could do it and we can't do it?
There's even been reported rumors that people all the way up to the White House may have been involved with it.
The White House, oh my God. we do know that Ronald Reagan smoked marijuana because that came out in the book by Kitty Kelly. When Ronald Reagan was governor of California, I used to smoke marijuana. And you know, when you think about it, that explains everything about poor Ronnie Reagan. It shows you why Republicans should not smoke marijuana.
Why is that?
Well, the amnesia, the forgetfulness, the short-term memory loss, the cheerful, hey, what's wrong, baby? Everything's fine, even though the country's going down.
Yeah, okay.
The long naps after lunch. You know, I mean, Ronnie, come on, leave marijuana alone.
Now,
by the way, both Ronnie's children, Ron Jr. and Betty Davis, of course, the kind of silly. The point I'm making here about the place, I think, to take a stand, abortion rights is one place, but marijuana, you can do it, the way to do it is through humor. Write letters to the editor. Challenge politicians as to whether they really think that alcohol is more dangerous than marijuana, and if so, why? And on a very common sense, logical, friendly, humorous approach.
You've always been one for the wit and to tickle people with a laugh and make them think, I've noticed. You do what you can to stimulate the mind in a fun way.
That's the aim of the game.
I think that's oftentimes why you've been so misconstrued by your contemporaries. They can't take a joke.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm misunderstood. The number one way to bring down any repressive authoritarian regime is irreverence. And I pride myself, I think I have a very high IQ, that is irreverence quotient. Okay. And I have been a leading dissenter in this country during the Johnson administration, during the Nixon administration. I'm proud to have been, I'm proud that Richard Nixon called me the most dangerous man in America. I mean, after all, what an honor. And
yeah, really.
And I want to urge those of you who just think for yourself, and the hemp issue is a wonderful issue to bring people together, because it brings together ecology. It brings together a substitute for petroleum, which of course is the real Republican addictive drug. It's such an ecologically helpful situation. Above all, it prevents us from cutting down the Amazon rainforest for wood pulp, or cutting down for fiber, because we all know that hemp is by far the best material. So that there's something that's very wonderful about a plant, and that human beings kind of rally behind a plant. Those 5 wonderful leaves that kind of represent wonderful, and the great thing about it is the right-wing Republicans and the right-wing religious fanatics hate it. And you know why they hate it? Because it makes people feel free, it makes people free feel funny and independent, and
now I would,
if they hate it, it's got to be something good about it. That's my logic.
I would shoot myself if I didn't ask this one last question, and that
oh
is,
my gosh, don't do that.
I know, because so many people say you had Timothy Leary there. Why didn't you ask him? And we have really tried to shy away from the recreational uses, so we don't want to make it a long respond. But do you feel that when consumed as a recreational plant, that it can bring you more in tune with your own being, with your own self, maybe put things into better perspective? Or is it like liquor, when you drink it, you're just so out of touch that you don't know what's going on?
Well, I spent 40 years scientifically studying the various botanical, vegetable gifts that the plant queendom has given the mammalian animal kingdom. And no question of in my mind that the mushrooms and marijuana are the greatest gifts given to us by the vegetable, the plant, the kingdom. You can misuse marijuana. It does make you there are like 3 dangerous side effects of marijuana. One is you kind of see too much, and that makes you kind of a little a little spacey because you know you just do see so much. And the second is short-term memory loss, like you forget what you were talking about. And the third dangerous side effect, I forget. No, don't ever smoke marijuana or use marijuana if you're going to go to school, if you're going to do anything that requires attention, concentration. It's just absolutely stupid. Do not use marijuana. Marijuana should be used for moments of real celebration and of glorification. And the one thing about marijuana is it's not a loner. It's something that you do with somebody else.
Okay.
The idea that someone would go off and smoke marijuana by themselves, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Kind of like doing this talk show that we've had the chance to do today.
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much for being a guest on our show. I'm being told by the side people here on the sides that we need to wrap it up. And I tell you, you've given us a lot of food for our minds.
Well, I'm all behind your cause, and it's an honor and pleasure to be with you, and thanks to the crew who did a great job.
I'd like to have you back on again sometime.
Okay.
Thank you. And the next time you see me, remember that you'll know it's time for hemp. So please join in, look around, tell your friends, get copies of the show, send it off to governors, send it off to senators, send it off to people whose minds are closed. Tell your friends about it. If you are a victim of this war on drugs, and feel that bringing your story to us might enlighten it to the nation where we can help make a change, please let us know. If there's people in your community who need to be focused on, please let us know. And if you have a challenge regarding any of our statements, remember Jack Herer once said, $10,000 to anybody who comes onto this show and disproves our findings. Jack Herer stands behind that statement. It's an honor to have him on our show. And again, I'll look for you the next time. Thank you.
First of all, we have a box of Frosted Flakes with Michael Phelps, the world's fastest swimmer, who says on the back, Michael rules with 8 for 8. And obviously marijuana didn't slow him down. I understand that he came out and won another meet here a couple weeks ago and didn't test positive for marijuana in the urine tests associated with there. So you must know that he has to wait a month or so after he smoked before. But it obviously didn't slow him down, and he seems to be breathing.
It seems like he grew
well.
gills.
He does. Now, right next to it, we have a cannabis extract. This is from Eli Lilly, another drug company that's still in existence today. It's extract number 96. Eli Lilly had about 15 different cannabis preparations, and this is just one. Right next door, we have Upjohn cannabis extract, a cannabis tincture. Both of these were liquid extracts of cannabis. Now, this one is from Merrill Drug Company, which is merged with another company. This was a powdered extract of cannabis. This was powdered hash, or keef. And this bottle held an ounce, 1 ounce, it says here on the back, 1 ounce of powdered extract of cannabis indica.
Nice.
This one's really old. It's circa 1870. It's got what they call label under glass, or lug. Lug stands for label under glass. They used to put the label on and then put the glass on top. And so this is a cannabis extract circa 1870. Right next door, we have a rare combination of an unopened cannabis container from Specific Medicines and an empty bottle. So we know there inside this there is a full bottle, and it's a Lloyd Brothers extract of cannabis. It's pretty nifty having a completely unopened and still sealed one here. Then right next door we have a larger dug bottle. These are dug out of the ground, and this one has it embossed right on the surface of the glass. It's Dr. H. James Cannabis Indica extract from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And it's embossed right on the surface of the glass. It says right here on this second line, Cannabis Indica. Cannabis Indica. Those of you which HD TV, you get the benefit tonight. And right next door, Linden's Balsam. We have a couple of different balsam medicines for coughs and colds. This one has many languages on the back, everything from Norwegian and Finnish to Spanish and Portuguese and Hungarian. The insert comes with 11 different things, and there's a full unopened bottle of this cough medicine. Right next to it is Dr. Bliss's Bliss Native Balsam for cough.